You've tuned in to chipsgrooveradio with Mike, John, and Jesse. Well, gentlemen, how are you doing this evening? It's been a couple weeks. Everyone doing well?
Yeah.
Lives in order?
Yeah, for
Games
sure.
playing?
I was all excited because, we're recording right before 4th of July, and I just got a new smoker, and I was like, sweet, I've had like a beef brisket in my, my big upright freezer downstairs for like a while, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to smoke it this weekend. And then I went down today to pull it out, and I realized I didn't actually have a beef brisket in my freezer. I must have made it at some point in the last year or two and just forgot. So,
that sucks.
I got to figure something else out.
Yeah. Got to go buy one.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
That reminds me of that. It was a really funny meme from a few years ago with that scene from Alien 3 where the aliens got his face up against Ripley and she's all scared, clinging against the wall. And above the alien, it says, "My new smoker," or something. And then above Ripley, it says, "The meat I've got ready for it." It's just, it was a good one. That was one of my favorites. But yes, we are sitting down before the 4th of July. Does anyone have any big plans other than smoking really. Phantom meat?
Phantom meat. Nothing for me. I think, Really, it's just going to be listening to all the crazies in my neighborhood shoot off fireworks all night until
for me,
hours.
It's going to be...
I'm actually a little shocked. I have not heard more than one night so far.
I've heard a couple, but for me, it's going to be probably my wife and son and daughter going out to see fireworks and me making the noble sacrifice to stay home so that my dogs don't lose their freaking minds.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
That's good, though. It is a noble.
But that'll give me a good excuse to, throw on a movie just loud enough that they can't hear the fireworks and detect that that's it. So I'll just put on, like a nice calming movie, like, Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan.
Like that.
Independence Day.
Yeah. Independence Day. Sure. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to comment on something that you, Jesse, had talked about in the chat the other day. And that was commenting, and I thought it matched appropriately for today's topic, but Blizzard cinematics. And I wanted to ask you guys when you noticed change in storytelling for video games, because I do think that Blizzard, as you had mentioned, Jesse, was a little bit ahead of the game when it came to visual storytelling and those really impactful CGI movies. Is there any game that really sticks out for you?
I would say in terms of like, as we'd call it back in the day, before we called it cinematics, FMVs or full motion videos. If a game had FMVs in it, it was serious business. But yeah, it's kind of cool. I went on a little bit of, I wouldn't say a deep dive, but I'll call it a little bit of a rabbit hole of games in my memory banks that really showed big changes and improvements in both like the storytelling visually and the actual storylines of the games. And I realized that it was pretty much all in the mid 90s, which is when I was in middle school and high school. So clearly that must be when the games were the best, because it's when the music was the best. So like, why wouldn't it be when the games were the best? Obviously.
Right.
But it's, I took a look at some of the games that really stood out to me from like a storyline perspective, not necessarily from like cinematics. And I'm like, oh, geez. Okay. So 94 was Final Fantasy VI. 95 was Chrono Trigger. 96 was Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall. 97 was Final Fantasy VII. 98 was StarCraft and Baldur's Gate. And then 99 was System Shock 2. And those games all really, I think, raised the bar in terms of just general storytelling. But the one that I think really, really bucked the trend, or I shouldn't say bucked the trend, the one that really set the trend, I think, for years down the line was probably Final Fantasy VII. It was one of the first major RPGs on, at the time, next generation consoles, being, PS1. And that game was chock-a-block full with cinematics.
Absolutely.
And some that stick with you, to this day, if you played them back and then. back then.
I had a memory card, and this is how much of a dork I was, but because those CGI, those FMVs were so impactful for the time, I had a memory card saved at key moments to where I could get to them quickly if I wanted to watch them again. I was like,
nice.
There's never been anything like this, guys. Yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah, I'm probably the worst person to ask this question too, because my gaming experience isn't really story driven to the most part. I mean, most of my early day gaming is flight simulators, Quake, Team Fortress, and then like Civilization type games and Age of Empires. Which there is some story, some FMVs, but it's not core to the game.
Right.
The one that really does stick out to me is the MechWarrior series, especially like MechWarrior 2 and MechWarrior 4 had really cool videos, especially MechWarrior 2 for the time, had really strong 3D graphic FMVs for the kind of the story element of that game, which I felt was pretty ahead of its time, especially the Tidarium edition that I had. But really that is about it. Most of the stories that I participated in were either MUDs where I was creating the story, or like World War II Online, where it was just a massive multiplayer, dogfight, and there was a story there, but it wasn't built into the game.
Well, and when I say storytelling, I don't necessarily mean it has to have a deep narrative or anything, but I mean when FMVs became a real big thing, it opened up the games, whether it is a flight simulator or an RTS game with minimal story. It changes how we viewed the game. It gave us a different perspective on how it worked. So that's totally legitimate. And I think for me, that number one, I didn't even think of it, John. I think for FMVs and RTS titles, it was 1998, Dune 2000. That was a big one. They had, Westwood was great. Yeah. Command and Conquer, really big on.
So campy, but great.
Those corny ass videos where they would actually hire people, actors, even Michael Biehn, who played Hicks in Aliens. You know, he was in some of them, and that's a big name.
Yeah,
but he was
John Curry.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think Mark Hamill was in the Wing Commander game, like Wing Commander 2, right?
Oh, yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, it adds a lot of character and a lot of depth just in the fact that they're getting actors we all know and love to do these things. And for me personally, as I mentioned earlier, Final Fantasy VII, that was big for me. But one of my favorite memories is when Diablo 2 came out and they got a little heavier with the cinematics.
Yeah.
Compared to Diablo 1, obviously. So they would have this opening cinematic and then one between each act and then one at the end, I think. But I was blown away by how much detail they were putting into this. And for the time, it looked and sounded amazing. And I was just blown away by like watching just the subtleties of what they were putting into the video. Like the Dark Wanderer's hand would start shaking, and he is the character from the first game, and he's trying to contain Diablo's power within him. And you can see it eating away at him with just like the smallest, subtlest stuff. I was like, I've never seen anything like this. This is amazing. So I think that,
oh, go ahead. I was just
going to say, I do think
exactly what you're saying.
They were ahead of the game. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah, Blizzard really was. And, the thing that kind of spurred this on, obviously, bearing the lead a little bit, but we're talking about a Blizzard game today.
Yeah.
First one, I think, that's been covered on the pod, right?
I did Diablo 1 and 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, actually, it was technically just 2, but other than that,
Yeah. But I mean, playing through Blizzard games from pretty early on, I think that the first one that I played was like the original Warcraft and then Warcraft 2. I mean, I basically followed those games, pretty much all the way through the series. I think I didn't play the very, very early stuff like Lost Vikings and Blackthorn, but basically from the day that Warcraft came out on DOS, I've been playing Blizzard games. And once they got up to about like StarCraft in, 98? Yeah, 98. That's when they really injected these big full motion videos or cinematics into kind of the design space of all of their games. And they really just kind of grew and grew from there. I mean, by the time you got to Warcraft 3, I mean, the cinematics in that game were such a cut above the rest. Anything else that was in video gaming to that point, they were the closest to photorealistic. They didn't look like a bunch of junky polygons that were dancing around the screen like you saw in even Final Fantasy VII. The fidelity of the graphics was way above that. And like I to this day, if I think about the cinematic of Arthas in Warcraft 3 after he's picked up Frostmourne and started to be overtaken by, the powers of the Lich King, walking into the throne room through Lordaeron City and then killing his father, like that was unreal to me at the time. That was before the internet. You didn't have any sense of what was actually going to be happening. Stuff didn't get spoiled. And I was floored when that happened. And being able to follow that story all through, the finish of Warcraft 3, meeting all the other characters in the game, and then eventually moving on to playing World of Warcraft, like no spoilers because the game's ancient at this point. And if you didn't play WoW then, you're not going to play through it now. But when you get through the second expansion, Wrath of the Lich King, like the last fight in the expansion is killing Arthas as the Lich King. And when you beat the boss, I don't think this happened at any other point in the game because it played more like a traditional MMO. When you beat Arthas, a cinematic kicks in. And at the end of the fight, just like it were a regular single player game, and you get to see his whole story arc wrap up. And it was was a really powerful moment. It was nothing that was expected because it wasn't something they had done in any of the previous boss fights. Usually you beat the boss and you finish the raid and you pick up the loot and then everybody cheers and, that's it. But this was something just a little bit different. And another cool thing that they did in that game was at one point in the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, there's a break right after you finish a very important quest, where they created a cinematic using all in-game graphics, which is again not really something that you saw up through that point in the the progression of the technology of video games. I just watched it yesterday after we were talking about this, and it still is fucking awesome. It's awesome. It's awesome. So kudos to Blizzard. They do great jobs with their cinematics, and me and my friends used to talk about how much we were looking forward to seeing what was going to be in the cinematics that were going to be in the next game, almost as much as the gameplay. So there you go.
Awesome. And I would say that Square has stepped up themselves, as have a lot of companies. At this point, it's part of the package, right? So cinematics are no longer as much of a thing. It's just in-game graphics generally. So, but yeah, I think when you are moved like that by something that changes, when you're there for the moment that you feel like the gaming landscape has changed and you're witnessing the next step, it is a powerful thing. And it's really cool when I'm listening to you talk about how Blizzard is kind of completing that loop of individual story arcs from games that in a way have nothing to do with World of Warcraft. They do, but World of Warcraft is its own thing. So to see them like wrapping up a story from the old Warcraft days is pretty cool.
Yeah. Very, very
and still
cool
giving
stuff.
that attention. But we're here to talk about StarCraft 2, ladies and gentlemen.
That we are.
We are here. Yes. Again, 1998 by Blizzard, the illustrious creators of franchises like Warcraft, Diablo. They entered the ring with StarCraft. So we knew at this point that they could make a compelling RTS game. I think Warcraft 2 is still a fantastic title. I actually have some urge to go back to it sometimes. And when StarCraft came out, I was ready for this because I was like, okay, sci-fi RTS, this is down my alley. So
it's actually funny. I didn't really play a lot of StarCraft when it came out.
No?
I didn't play 1 or Brood War. I mostly played the Command and Conquer all the way through like 2 and 3 and all that. So I never really caught on to StarCraft. I got pretty heavy into StarCraft 2 though.
when
it came out, because there really wasn't any other RTS of that caliber as polished as StarCraft 2 when it came out. So I kind of got latched onto it.
And that's another thing, polish is big.
That's what Blizzard does, is they make polished games that take them 12 years to put out.
Well, that's what they did.
Yeah,
that's what they did.
That's what they did. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was looking at like the release timeline for StarCraft 2, And I had forgotten how long it was between the first episode and then Heart of the Swarm and then Legacy of the Void.
Yeah.
So like StarCraft 2 came out in 2010. It was 3 years before Heart of the Swarm came out, and then another 2 years before Legacy of the Void. These are all the same game engine, people. Same game engine. No changes.
Technically same game. Yeah, same game. Third chapter, 6 years later.
Wild.
Couple new units, and that's basically it, and plus a story.
Yeah. Too
well,
funny.
for those who may not know, StarCraft revolves around 3 warring races: the Terrans, who are essentially human; the Zerg, an homage, I would say, to the aliens from the titular film; and the Protoss, which I would say are closer to to put a low bar, an Independence Day alien, the telepathic, they're
space elves.
Space elves who are all wise and all knowing and pretty pompous, but.
So for nerds like me and John, I remember when the original StarCraft came out, and I was like, "Oh, this is literally a ripoff of Warhammer 40K," because there's like Space Marines that look exactly 100%. Like Space Marines in 40K. So there's Imperium of Man. Yeah. There's Zerg, which are Tyranids, like literally 100% Tyranids, and Protoss, which are
kind of Eldar.
They're Eldar, but they're just look funky. But same,
they're beefy Eldar.
Yeah, exactly.
They're
Exactly. They're beefy Eldar. It's
come on, guys. No one's wholly original anymore. Come on.
I mean, I don't know if there were ever any lawsuits about this, but it is pretty freaking on the nose. Doesn't matter. It's still a great series of games, but oh boy.
Yeah, it took Warhammer a bit long, 40K a bit longer to come out with an RTS that was somewhat decent.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess StarCraft did it first.
Well, I do want to say that I think, obviously, I took influences from Warhammer, but I want to say I think they drew some inspiration from Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
I mean, Starship Troopers feels more authoritarian and militaristic, but StarCraft does have a little element of that mixed with what I call, it's like a cowboys and Indians framed in science fiction veneer.
Yeah.
So the Terrans have a very good old boy cowboy feel. Some of the units even have southern accents. Their profile pictures have cigarettes hanging out of their mouths. They're scruffy, unkempt. The Zerg, on the other hand, are monstrous, ravenous beings that come in all sorts of frightening shapes and sizes. They exist in a hive, and they're terrifying. But
and I guess the Protoss are the Europeans in that analogy.
Yes, absolutely. The Western in space thing wasn't a new concept, but it was unique and interesting, and Blizzard had a lot of fun building this universe with the 3 competing races. So the score is composed by Derek Duke, Glenn Stafford, Neil Ackery, Russell Brower, and Chris Velasco. There are some other names attached, but I believe they were solely responsible for the other 2 chapters in this game, and right now we're only going to be talking about Wings of Liberty. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's fair.
Okay. Yes,
fair and balanced. And that, the Wings of Liberty was primarily the Terran single player game.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. It's a game that I played a lot of multiplayer. I played on ranked multiplayer with my Protoss. I was a Protoss player.
Fuck yeah,
Protoss player.
I love Protoss.
I got up like diamond level multiplayer. I played a shit out of StarCraft 2, but I also played the single player pretty much all the way through. And I think I played all 3 campaigns when they came out because it was a compelling game. The single player missions were really fun and interesting, and they were pretty unique. And the music was great, so I think that really drove everything through.
So John, were you like a turtle up and build a fleet of carriers kind of guy, or like a Dark Templar rush kind of guy, or
stalkers?
Yeah,
just macro stalkers. That's basically
stalkers for days. Yep.
That's awesome. I was a bitch. I did the carrier thing a lot. I'm not gonna lie, but that being said, I didn't do a lot of multiplayer because I'm just not that good. So I choose to win. And I win against the computer, so that's how I do that.
I thought I was good at multiplayer from playing private games with my friends, and then I got out into the real world and got smashed. I was like, "Oh, okay."
It's all those.
This is where we're
all
at.
Those South Koreans.
Yeah,
They are
Well, I
very
mean,
good
even
at
in
it.
North America, there's a lot of pros
Yeah,
in
that's
North
true.
America.
Mhm.
But the it's funny. I early on in the game, I did really well in the ranked, but my trajectory was like a straight line,
Mhm.
whereas my opponents and everyone else was like a bell curve. And by the time I got a couple, like maybe a year or two into it, and I was just losing and losing. I wasn't like actually practicing, which is what at the level I was at, you have to like
Keep
practice
up.
your timing and practice your macro and all that. I just wasn't. I wasn't fast enough, and I wasn't interested enough to waste time doing that. So I kind of fell off and just started playing co-op with Dean or something.
Mhm.
Nice. Well, this soundtrack plays out much like a film score, I believe. And because StarCraft 2 was 3 different games, again, we are going to concentrate on Wings of Liberty. It's a mashup of twangy rock guitars. It has its sweeping orchestral arrangements and some electronica for flair. What I think the composers were concerned with was identifying who the Terrans are, as they should. There needs to be a real feeling like the player, the commander, if you will, is one of these people, while also reminding us that we are playing a game of conquest. So I don't think, and I'm going to start off with a banger, I don't think there's a song on this soundtrack that better illustrates the themes of this game than Heaven's Devils. I think it covers all its bases somehow, and I think that's a really strong title.
It's the soundtrack. It's a song when you think of StarCraft
Yeah.
2. That is the immediate song that comes to your mind. That is the first song that kind of reaches out to you, and it is such a Rust Belt, but also militaristic style. I mean, there's like banjo and like electric guitar, twangy guitar, and but still has that driving percussion and all that to make you feel like you're actually a commander in the military.
Yeah. So beautiful. I mean, at its heart, StarCraft 2 is about base building, army coordination, and exploration. And I think this song shifts tonally several times, and doing so captures these themes masterfully in their own little bits. And it starts off with the heavy guitars coming in and slowly building to a heavy guitar riff. And it pops off in such a way where it's like, yeah, okay, this is fantastic. I can imagine building my base to this and watching all these guys just kind of gathering resources, and you're imagining your base and army slowly grow as the song progresses. It also manages to capture the exploration aspect of StarCraft. You know, what's behind the fog of war, and that comes in the second part of the song, where it becomes much more ethereal, much more ambient music rather than a rock song necessarily. It's just a pleasure to listen to this song and change direction at least 4 times, and it's completely interesting the entire time you're listening to it. Like, where are we going to go next? And that's one of the ideas behind the game is, you know, obviously space is very vast, and, you know, where is the game going to take us? But this is just one of those songs that you immediately think of, like John said.
Yeah, one thing that I think this song and a couple others on the album really do, it's kind of cool, is they really do almost have very distinct movements. I mean, some of the songs, when you listen to them, you know, on YouTube or Apple Music or wherever, they're, you know, some of them are like 7 minutes long, 9 minutes long, and they go
Mengsk.
Yeah, Mengsk, exactly. They go through like multiple different segments that actually in the game are a lot of times broken up into different parts of a mission or different parts of a story, but from a composition standpoint, they all get kind of mashed together. And they almost tell a story, and I think Heaven's Devils really does that. This is the song that you hear when you're, you know, land on the planet and you start telling your SCVs to go gather some crystals and build an extractor so you can get some gas, and you're building your barracks and pumping out your first couple of Marines. Like, it's just the movements and the muscle memory are almost tied to the music in this song as much as anything else.
Oh yeah,
it's really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic song. Perfect song for that initial base building. It gets you in the mindset, and you're like, this is StarCraft. The game has begun. And this song is made up of different songs. Is that correct? Where they took parts from other songs and mashed them together to create Heaven's Devils. Yeah. Is that accurate?
I think so, yeah.
I believe so.
I think so.
But it still works very, very well. Now, before we move on, we got into it just briefly a second ago. What race did everyone play? Was everyone here a Protoss?
No, Zerg all the way, man. Zerg. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I dabbled in Zerg. I dipped my toes in Zerg as well, but I mostly played Protoss.
I was intimidated by the Zerg, I'm going to be honest. I was like, there's a lot of stuff going on here. I don't know what I'm doing.
Hydralisks and Mutalisks, that's all you need, bud. That's all you need. Occasionally some
so what was your...
That's about it.
So that was your army of choice then?
Yeah, I wasn't like a Zergling Rush kind of guy. I didn't.
I was going to ask.
No, I'm not a scumbag. I actually wasn't really that good with Zerglings. I usually popped them out at the wrong point, or just didn't hide them in good enough spots so they'd get spotted by like an observer or, whatever else, and just get murdered. But Hydralisks, oh yeah, those things. And then if you see, like, if you fly in 10 or 12 Mutalisks to your opponent's base and just tear apart all their resource gatherers before they get a chance to respawn, because they get those little bouncing glaive things that knock out a couple of models, a couple of units at a time. Oh yeah, the things of beauty, absolute things of beauty.
The more you know, ladies and gentlemen, how to annihilate your enemies.
Yes, indeed.
What about you, John? You were the Protoss?
Protoss, yeah, mostly.
Nice.
Yeah, focus more on Blink Stalkers, because that's really... I didn't have the APM to deal with a full like death ball with, although I don't know, Colossus, were they in the first game?
I think so.
I don't remember.
Were they?
I think so. I
don't remember. Colossus?
Yeah, the big War of the Worlds motherfuckers. Those things.
Yeah. I don't remember which units came out in which expansions, but for the most part, Protoss was pretty death ball.
Yeah.
Like it was just a death ball. And I think it kind of still is, but there's a lot more options for harassment, which there wasn't really any options for worker harassment with Protoss. But now they have oracles and stuff like that.
Oh, man.
Back in my day, we didn't have oracles to kill SCVs. Yeah, but that's basically it. I never really cannon rushed or anything either. I wasn't a scumbag either.
No, you can't do that because it just kills the fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of scumbags out there, and I have died several times to scumbags. So
I think that's just what happens when you lose, right? You find some reason to call your opponent a scumbag because you didn't adequately prepare to deal with the 10 Zerglings that they send to your base. Yeah, 10 Zerglings, people.
No, they're scumbags.
Meanwhile, it's like, oh, you could just make like 2 zealots and they would win, but no.
Just kill them all.
Just kill them all. No.
Scumbags.
Oh.
Yeah, I think building on the Heaven's Devils, my probably number one pick for, if I had to go with a song that just kind of set the theme for the Terran campaign, that was probably on equal footing to Heaven's Devils, it's got to be Public Enemy. And I don't know if it's just a weakness that I have for twangy guitar and Western vibes, because like my favorite songs from games like Bastion, Borderlands,
I was just gonna say
StarCraft 2, like if there's a twangy guitar and a harmonica, you got me. You got me.
It's beautiful. It really depends on how it's used. I'm not going to say it's bad if it's much more animated than this, but this is, number one, maybe something you're not expecting to hear in a game set 500 years in the future. Mm-hmm. It gives you that idea of who Jim Raynor is.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, played by Don Johnson on the box. That's who it always reminds me of.
Hell yeah.
Jim Raynor looks like Don Johnson. But I think this song is just one of those things that captures your attention because it's jarring. It's not something you necessarily expect. At least it is for me. And the twangy guitar is very mood setting, and it's very effective when they accompany it with a little bit of orchestra in the background and a little tension. And that's what the song really brings forth.
Yeah, I think it's mainly there to label, especially in the single player campaign, to label the Raynor's Roughnecks as loners and as on their own and as hard bitten, gritty, Space Marines. And I think it does it well to kind of set that mood for the missions and the campaign as it goes on.
Yeah, and it is worth noting that by the time of StarCraft 2, Jim Raynor is a mercenary at this point. He's no longer part of the military necessarily. So, yeah, this is just the perfect way to exhibit that loner, rough and tumble group of people, right?
Yeah.
Excellent choice.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Like, even a couple of the different songs on this soundtrack even highlight like the differences between the different factions in, amongst the Terran race. Because, it's got the Western vibes, like with, Raynor's unit. But then there's also the Dominion, which was, I think, at one point known as the Confederacy, which is like this authoritarian, government that Mengsk, installs himself as emperor of. And then partway through the game, the, United Earth Directorate just charges back in, coming from Terra to try and put down the Dominion and reestablish what do you call it? Reestablish control over the sector. It's kind of cool because it's easy to forget that there are, as ever is the case with humans in pretty much any space game, different factions, different political machinations, and the music tracks with that. It's really cool.
Yeah, the music definitely has a more authoritarian with the Dominion. It's very different than Raynor's Raiders, if you will.
Yeah, it's much more orchestral and authoritarian.
Absolutely.
For me, some of the songs that really help shape the story, at least towards the end of the story, is one of them is The Hive, where Raynor goes into, I believe this is where he goes to confront Kerrigan and to try to rescue her and then change her back to human or remove the Zerg hive mind from her. It's a nice, creepy beginning of this whole soundtrack is, for the most part, pretty not upbeat. It's kind of morose, but it also has that militaristic and driving feel to it. Maybe some orchestral, along with the twangy guitar. This starts out a lot more ominous and a lot more horror focused because you're going into the belly of the beast, into the hive, and it's kind of towards the end of the campaign where you're trying to rescue Kerrigan. So I think it's a really good atmospheric song that sets up the ending of the game pretty well.
It is a much darker tone than the rest of the album, and dealing with the Zerg, you're going to get something like that, but it takes this turn from normal, I guess you can say, music, orchestral arrangements, things like that, and goes more to the atmospheric. And I think it does have a twinge of Quake in there, the original Quake, where this is an environment you're hearing. This is very discordant, very unsettling, low drums, screeching electric guitar that kind of wafts in and out of presence. It feels very much like Quake in certain regards, and there's much less of a melody than the rest of the album. So to comment on what you're saying, John, it's you are now in the hive where you're going to confront Kerrigan, who, you know, there's a little bit of a love thing between her and Raynor. It's still terrifying to be here. So the song definitely encapsulates that, despite the fact that she might not just outright kill you. It's just one of those things where there's danger. Very well
Can we
done.
talk about, just for a moment, how amazing the characters in this game are, and kind of a cut above some other games of the time, original StarCraft or not? Like, Kerrigan and Raynor are amazing. Fantastic writing, fantastic voice acting. Kerrigan's one of the more tragic characters that I can think of in video game history. Right up there with Arthas from Warcraft 3. Like, stellar story writing. I mean, it's just great.
I love the second expansion. Her campaign was amazing. In StarCraft 2 was so good.
She got so much story and so much life out of her character that it was... I didn't really see it coming off of Brood War. I mean, I know she became the number one in the sector in the universe or whatever, but she was given a much more tragic story than I thought. And she was already tragic by the end of the original StarCraft, but it took a turn, and this was like, okay, I really feel for this character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Jim Raynor, he's just a badass.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta love him.
Just the most authentic, like, good-hearted dude.
Yep.
And a lot of times those characters can be kind of boring, but he's not. He's just got enough depth that he holds your attention, you know?
Yeah.
And his little headbutting with Tychus towards the end of Wings of Liberty was really cool.
Yeah.
Really compelling stuff. Who has their favorite unit?
Oof. In Wings of...
Unit in the whole game.
Oh, yeah, the whole game, huh? Jeez.
A whole game unit.
I mean, Stalker.
Yeah.
It's got to be Stalker.
Yeah.
That's not a bad one.
That's kind of tough. I think, honestly, it's the Reaver. I really, really, really like Reavers. They're super cool. Like, they're not easy to use. They're not like point and click like siege tanks are, but when they go off, man, it feels so satisfying. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a Protoss guy, I think one of my favorite units is the siege tank, just because you feel like you have so much power when they do their alternate thing and kind of dig into the ground. You're like, oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
And then 20 Zerg.
And then 20 Zerg destroy it. Not exactly a good unit, but a fun unit. So, well, you both know that I'm a sucker for a theme song. So I would not be happy with myself if I didn't mention Wings of Liberty, the song. Okay. While Heaven's Devils manages to encompass the whole gameplay aspect of it, there is a good title theme here that plays more on the theatrical side. And Wings of Liberty, as a title track, it is all orchestral and extremely nostalgic. When it opens with those slowly swelling horns that kind of crescendo into the iconic theme from the menu of the first game, I got chills. The song only goes on to become this beautifully bombastic and even have that twinge of love in there between Raynor and Kerrigan. Very poetic orchestra in this song. You go from extreme highs to extreme lows with ease. It just reminds me of the scope of StarCraft's universe. StarCraft 2 will be bigger than before. And it's just such a perfect song. I really love this song.
Yeah, man. When the choir kicks in at like around 45 seconds or so, and then you get the big building orchestral in the background, and then those horns kick in. Oh my God. I was listening to it in my car the other day while I was driving, and it was way too loud, and I had all the windows down, and it's the middle of like the
On
summer.
my way home today.
I can't even imagine what people at the stoplights were thinking. They're like, what the fuck is this guy listening to?
I love it.
Awesome.
I love it. I did it on the way home today. So good.
Yeah, the nostalgia, like you said, every time you open up StarCraft 2, you're met, at least with Wings of Liberty, you're met with that soundtrack, and it just every time it hits, it's great.
To be waiting 12 years for the sequel, right?
Yeah.
It's like, come on, to have it in your hands in 2010. It's like, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
I remember looking at, just a little off topic here. I remember looking at the download size or the install size. I was like, 12 gigs. What the fuck? At the time, that was a lot, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, man. But yeah, excellent song. It really tells you you're in for something grand, and it can really show how epic StarCraft can be. And while the first game did so much, I think this one just really stepped it up. And the song definitely indicates that. In fact, I did go back and listened to the original title theme, and it does parallel a little bit with the rest of the song, but you can definitely tell, now they've got real instruments and real orchestras and choirs, and they can afford all that now, but it did have its moments on the original StarCraft, so it was very, very cool to listen to the comparison there. Now, Jesse, you mentioned Mengsk.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised, because you also picked the longest song on Zelda the other day.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of my favorites, Wings of Liberty, I think was probably on everybody's list. It's a phenomenal song. But Mengsk is a really impressive piece of music. It's another one of those that goes through, multiple different segments, movements, whatever you want to call it. And it sounds like the Song of the Dominion. I mean, it literally personifies this big, authoritarian empire, and Mengsk's own persona, really better than I could think any other song could. And when you get a couple of minutes in and the phonograph starts playing, and you can just see him in your mind's eye, just sitting in his office, smoking a cigar, sipping a glass of wine, and listening to this.
Is so full of
my
himself.
God, it's unreal.
Very intense song, very driving, and I'm going to read verbatim the notes I've got. Very driving and indicative of Mengsk's character. He's a force to be reckoned with. This is one of the tracks that will get your pulse going, complete with an egotistical and pompous operatic transition in the middle. It just adds to his demeanor of righteousness.
Yep. I remember, is going back to StarCraft 1, but I mean, I still can remember how shocked I was when he abandons Kerrigan in StarCraft 1.
Oh, man.
And she ends up getting taken by the Zerg, and Raynor is just losing his mind. My God. What a character. Like, what a character. Incredible villain.
Yeah.
Yeah, the song is, like you said, is transitions great. I mean, it's a nine almost 10-minute song. It almost, the length of it is indicative of the control that Mengsk has over the fate of Raynor and Kerrigan and all that.
Absolutely.
He is the bad guy, even though ostensibly Kerrigan and the Zerg are the bad guys in Wings of Liberty. Really, the main player is Mengsk, and the song just drives that home.
Well, and there's something to be said when you know who the quote unquote bad guy is. It's the alien, right? It's gotta be. So you know, you have this feeling that they're going to flip it on you, and you know in your heart that Kerrigan is not this awful creature. She was human at one point. She's just out for revenge at this point. And you know that Mengsk is the big bad. He's the guy who is making awful decisions and turning his back on people he should never have turned his back on. And I've always felt closer to Kerrigan, even though she is the bad guy at times. So it's like,
for sure.
I mean, they do that so well where Mengsk is a human and he's part of your race, give or take. And yet you hate his guts. You want nothing to do with him. And you know that he's out there somewhere and he's going to rear his head somewhere and do awful things. So, yeah.
Well, to kind of round everything out, one of the penultimate song of this album, Fire and Fury, does a really good job of setting up the final showdown. It has that hopeful melody to it, but still in a way that is morose, and there's a lot of minor keys to it. It's a really good setup for the final confrontation. I just love how it gently starts and kind of builds from there into the setup for what will be the final battle.
Yeah. Very angelic start to this song. Choir and strings, very beautiful. You can imagine yourself entering a massive cathedral. Obviously, that's not what's happening, but this is that moment in the movie where your forces are gathered and you're making that final push, right? The strings and the choir really kind of fade away into this flighty melody, which leads into the darkness kind of lurking underneath it all. This is going to be a battle, a very decisive battle, and it is preparation for the final confrontation. And as those strings wane, the powerful timpani just transitions us from angelic beauty to sorrowful fear as the main theme of, again, Wings of Liberty is played lightly and sung by the choir. It is so powerful. It's one of those slow motion movie moments. And I think it's great because at the culmination, everything in the story is ramping up to this one moment, and the door is opening to that final confrontation, and then boom, it's over. Like, you don't even know the song ends. It's over. And the next chapter, the final fight is upon you. And aptly, the final song is the showdown. So
yeah, I mean, this song, it just screams military at me. I mean, we were talking in, one of the recent episodes about, the music that plays when you're lining up your forces in the Total War series. Yep. This song gives me a very sort of similar vibe. Like, that this is the last chance you're going to have to prepare before battle. And, the strings start building, the horns start building, the choir kicks in, and it really gets your blood pumping. It hypes you up for that final showdown in, I think, a really great way. Very impactful. Very impactful.
Yeah.
It's just such a beautiful song. And the album as a whole. I mean, this score really commands its audience with a lush and diverse set of tracks that really keep the story present. And that's something that is, at least for me, in my history with RTS titles, the story isn't the biggest part, but that feels different for StarCraft. And even for Warcraft in the day. Even without knowing the source material of StarCraft, if you listen to this album, you get specific imagery coming to your mind for certain songs. And I think that really represents the care the tracks were given and the respect for the story that was being told. The Terrans are that gruff, rough and tumble people. At the end of the day, this is a military story. There is some, I guess you could call it soap opera element to it to keep it kind of engaging, but the composers really worked together in various aspects to really bring the story to life and show us how grand StarCraft could be. So this album, very good. Very good stuff.
When we do our ratings, I'm going to challenge you guys to give it X number of your favorite unit quote. All right.
Okay.
So,
unit quote. Okay.
So bear that. You just roll it around in the back of your head. I'm just saying. All right. Go ahead, John.
Oh, man. Unit quotes. I was going to say, for a real-time strategy game to have a campaign that is so impactful that you remember it, 14 years later, is pretty unique. I mean, we all played Command and Conquer, and while you can remember bits and pieces of the campaigns over those years, mostly because they're very campy and silly, you don't really remember the overarching. You tend to not remember the overarching story, but StarCraft 2 with its extremely impressive soundtrack that drives your emotions throughout the entire campaign, it just solidifies those memories of Raynor and Typhus and Kerrigan and Mengsk all into this. As soon as you start listening to the soundtrack again, it just drives those memories back up and makes that campaign that much more special. So it's pretty.
Yeah,
amazing.
there's very few RTS games that have managed to pull off the memorable single player game. I mean, more often than not, especially in like the kind of late 90s, early 2000s, an RTS game a lot of times was kind of defined by its multiplayer. If the game didn't have a great multiplayer mode or didn't have good matchmaking, it just didn't really last. Like, there's a couple of older RTS games that I used to really love, but there wasn't really a way to get good multiplayer games in. And the single player games were kind of a slog. They didn't really have great stories, and they just don't really stick in your memory the way that things like, any of the Blizzard RTSs, Homeworld, some others really do. And I think the thing that really ties those together are the music. I mean, the music complements the storytelling and makes all of those moments so much more memorable. And this game is no exception to that.
RTSs definitely took a more professional turn with StarCraft. So kudos to Blizzard for that. Kudos to the composers for helping achieve that story element, that theatrical composition, that theatrical bringing of things together to create a narrative that people actually really care about for a real-time strategy game where you're sitting above everything. You're not up close and personal with these people outside of in between battles. So you don't necessarily feel the attachment, but StarCraft managed to make that work. And I think that is in no small part due to the composers as well. So to answer your question, Jesse, I would say my rating for this album is 10 out of 10. My life for ire.
That's a good one. It's a good one. How about you, John? What do you got?
Yeah, I think it's just got to be a 10 out of 10. We are one with the shadow.
That's a good one too.
It's just amazing.
I'm gonna say this is
bring us home.
Well, geez, I mean, you guys both did Protoss, right? I guess I got to do a Protoss one too.
Yeah, well,
do Zerg. Do Zerg.
No, I'm not gonna do a Zerg.
Make the weirdest noise you can make.
I'm gonna increase you guys' blood pressure for about 10 seconds right now. I'm gonna give it 10 out of 10 nuclear launch detected.
Oh God.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
Where is it? Where's the red dot?
Where's the red dot? Oh God.
Fuck. Okay, well, we do, as people know, like to give kudos to the composers. So I'm going to list off here their Twitter accounts, because I will not call it X. At Derek M. Duke. He is the music director at Blizzard. At Glenn L. Stafford. At Neil_Acree, ACREE. And at Russell_Brower. You can also buy this album on Amazon on CD form. For the moment, I think it's outside third-party sellers, but you can still find it. And most importantly, you can get it on iTunes. So I suggest you go show these people some love for a wonderful, wonderful soundtrack, because we will likely never get a StarCraft 3 because the story is essentially over. Yeah. So,
and the company is essentially over.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think they just do World of Warcraft.
I hope they
now.
don't
Like,
do
that's
anything.
pretty much it.
Yeah,
I guess technically they did Diablo 4, which I did not.
They did Diablo 4.
I didn't like, and I stopped playing because it's not
It's
good.
different. The new expansion's coming out, which is exactly the price of a new game, so it better be worth it.
Well, that's Blizzard
I'm
style.
still a Diablo fan, so
That's literally
Yeah, I know.
Blizzard style, and they set that bar with StarCraft 2 because each one of these was the price of a full price game.
Yeah.
But at least you were getting a full game out of it. Together, they were each their own very compelling, very worth it prices for worth it games, even if it was technically the same game you were buying 3 times.
Yeah.
Before we go, I want to thank John for his time with us. He will be no longer on the show for the time being. He's taking a step back. He's focusing on family, and that is fine by us. I wish him the best. I know you do as well, Jesse, and you have been instrumental in getting me this far, John, and I love you for it. So I wish you the best, and you are always welcome back, my friend.
Well, thanks for having me. You can't get rid of me that easy. I'll be around. I'll be hanging around.
I hope so.
Stalking the shadows. Get it?
Stalking.
I'll blink in every once in a while.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to that. And again, thank you, because you've definitely helped the show.
No problem. Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, I think that about does it for tonight. Would you like to say goodbye?
I'll see you in Aldoon.
Aldoon.
For Aldoon.
That's another one. For Aldoon.
In the pipe, 5x5.
By 5.
Oh, yeah.
That one doesn't really make sense.
No, not really.
5x5 is the radio transmission. So
They just stole it from aliens. I think this sounds good.
which also didn't do it right.
Right, yeah.
Sounds cool, though. Look up at that.
Sounds cool.
Sounds pretty sick.
Think of Pharaoh every time, but... Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, please rate and subscribe. We very much appreciate it. Also visit our brand new website, magusmediaproductions.net, to get all information on every show. See you next time.
Well, hello there, Internet people. My name is Josh, and I am one of the hosts of the Nastagram RPG podcast. We're an actual play podcast, and we're good. And why are we good? Well, let's let the other host tell you. Dan.
Hey, everyone. If you like authentic, real-world sound effects, our lasers go pew-pew.
I love it. Matt.
Skip me. Coming back to Matt.
Ryan.
Okay, so after 2 decades of trying, we finally mastered the 3.5 grapple.
We're not doing that.
Try again. Scratch that.
Check it out. Look it up.
Cut. John.
If you're looking for a RPG podcast that plays a whole hell of a lot of games, we like to spice the life.
Spice it up.
Spice it up.
Matt, you ready?
Yeah, I think I'm ready. If you enjoy bad accents and overacting, you'll enjoy our podcast.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
And Jake, bring us home.
I like to just say we didn't just throw a phone on the table and hit record. Like, Josh does a damn good job with the editing. And
Facts.
if you care about that, you will not be disappointed.
That's right. We spent a bunch of money that we don't make on the podcast.
100%.
So check us out, Nastagram RPG Podcast. You can find us on all the goddamn podcast apps, and we'll see you there.
That's nasty.